Hi everybody, Joe Conroy, financial advisor here, and today I'm in Towson, Maryland, a place close to my office. Behind me you'll see what is going to be Towson Row. So several years ago, it's a real estate development project that began and then hit some turbulence where we had to switch over to a different developer. And why is that? Well, what they found, developer number one, was when they were starting to, after doing testing and all the other things, they started to build their underground parking garage, only to find out that underground was tons of granite that they didn't know about beforehand. So that big surprise cost them a lot of money and ended up costing them the project. They had to turn it over to a different developer to take on. So what does that have to do with your retirement plan or your financial plan? Well, the point is that we need to make sure that we've got a solid foundation that we're building upon, and that we try and cut out all the different surprises when we're planning for our financial future. Because surprises, when you're talking about your financial foundation or the foundation where you're going to build a several $100 million foundation, those surprises are expensive. We just have to figure out how we can cut them out as best we can. So today, let's talk about how to build and test your foundation for your retirement plan. So how do we first try and build a solid financial foundation, and then next, how do we test to make sure that that solid financial foundation will meet up to our expectations? Well, a solid foundation is really built on realistic expectations. A lot of people try and plan on retirement planning based on expenses that they think they will have in the future, or they try and anticipate what retirement's going to look like. In my experience, we want to use numbers that are better than best guesses. We want to use something that's based a little bit more in reality. So how do we create realistic expense expectations? Let's go with what you're spending right now. Most people don't take the step down in expenses in retirement as much as they think they will. In fact, if you've got some health insurance costs, you've got some extra travel that you've been putting off and you haven't had the time to do it, now you're retired and you can, sometimes we'll see that the expenses in retirement will stay the same or they'll increase, which a lot of people really don't anticipate, and that could kind of throw off a retirement plan before you even get started. So let's plan for realistic expenses, and the way that we do that in very, very simple terms is we take what your net take-home pay is. So whatever on a monthly basis you get after taxes, after you put money into your 401k or 403b, what actually hits your checking account, let's take that number on a monthly basis, and that's what we need to put into your account in retirement to make sure that you're living the lifestyle that you're accustomed to. And if you do end up spending less than that number in retirement, well, even better. You've got to even, we've overshot your expenses, which means that you'll have a higher success rate. So that's where we want to start. We want to start and build a foundation on realistic expenses, and we also want to set realistic expectations for what our return numbers are going to be. If you've come into retirement a little light on savings, a lot of people sometimes might think, well, I'll just get more aggressive with my investments, and that way I can kind of make up that shortfall with higher return numbers. Higher return numbers come with higher volatility, which could actually decrease your likelihood of success in retirement. So we don't want to assume higher rates of return than are normal. What's normal? I can't give you that answer right now. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. But if you do some research, talk to a qualified financial advisor, and they can kind of help paint that picture, give you some specific numbers so that you can actually have actionable advice for how you can plan for retirement. So we talked a little bit about how we can make sure that our foundation is on solid footing, but we still want to make sure that we're testing that foundation and making sure it'll work, not just in the good markets, but also the bad ones, which I think are a little bit more important to understand when you're looking at taking money out of your portfolio, and there's something called the sequence of return risk, which might be a subject for a different video. So how do we test that? The old school method of financial planning is you take whatever average return you think you're going to get, and then you run it and see if the plan works. The problem is you're not going to get 5, 6, or 7% returns every single year. It just doesn't happen. There's a variable sequence of returns that we need to account for if we're actually doing some retirement planning. So how do we do that? There's a new method of evaluating your portfolio and the plan. It's called a Monte Carlo analysis. Now, the name does imply gambling, but not really in this instance. So Monte Carlo analysis, just the name of it. But really what it does is it takes the variable rates of return that you might get, not 7% a year, but up 12, down 5, and whatever the realistic numbers are based on how risky your portfolio is. and it'll run that 1,000 different times or 500 times or 10,000 times, however many times you want. It'll run realistic Jane and John Doe retirements and see how many of them were successful in good times, bad times, and everything in between. So what's a really good success rate? Well, that really kind of comes down to what you and your advisor feel is a good success rate. But what I can tell you is it gives you a much more accurate number than the average return. So the important thing that I want to convey in this video is that we make sure that we're building a solid foundation based on realistic expectations, and then we're testing those in the most realistic way possible to see if it has a favorable outcome or not. And I talked about it before in a previous video, but we want to make sure that even though everything looks great, that we still have some flexibility within that plan so we can adjust if things start working out a little bit different. You know, if we do all the homework and the testing that we can, we still need to allow a little bit of variance for some overspending, the tires that need to be replaced that we didn't anticipate, things like that. So, solid foundation, test it multiple times over, and it should make for a more comfortable, more confident retirement so that you can sleep well at night and know that you've done all that you can do to try and make sure that you're on the right path. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it.